There are a lot of anime out there these days, and it often feels like more than a few of them simply exist because something is popular, and the creators behind the series want to jump on that cash cow. This often results in soulless animation, story, and all the other parts of the whole that make up our beloved media. Luckily, on the other hand, there are anime that instead take joy in what they're doing, celebrating what came before them, and infusing that love of the genre into what they're making now. I'd like to talk about the latter kind of anime today, through the lens of two shows that I've dearly loved watching this season, Boku no Hero Academia and Knights and Magic. You might notice right away that Knights and Magic seems incredibly offbeat when put in the same sentence as that love letter to American comics My Hero Academia stands as testament to, especially considering the two shows' respective popularity. And you'd be right to question why I want to talk about these two shows together. Knights and Magic isn't as well animated, the story is much less well paced, and the character designs are nowhere near as vibrant and varied as Boku no Hero Academia. But the key to why I want to talk about it is because Knights and Magic loves its core idea and genre in the same way My Hero Academia does, even if all the other pieces of the puzzle don't quite fit nearly as well together. Now, I've previously talked about how joy can affect the perception of an anime in my video on Little Witch Academia, which you can find up there in that little bubble thing that pops up in the top right. And I want to touch on that in respect to these two new series, as well as going a bit further into what it is and why it's important not only in the context of the series, but outside of it as well. Much like Akko, Deku and Ernesti find incredible joy in what they pursue, whether that be magic, superheroes, or giant mechs. And that clear happiness these characters show through their anime is infectious, if you even spend a little bit of time with them. It's why we root so much for Akko and Deku to get what they want, since these two are normal, and both work incredibly hard to reach even that slightest hope of change they have in their hearts, no matter how impossible it may seem on the outset. Conversely, Ernesti is much more of your typical self-insert protagonist, and adding on top of this is his situation as a 30-year-old guy isekai'd after death into a child's soulless body. Or at least I hope it was soulless, considering the main character basically replaces whatever was inside before. While this can be a problem in anime like Sword Art Online, the Asterisk Score, and multitudes of other anime, there's a certain je ne sais quoi that separates Ernesti from Kirito or Ayato, at least for me. It's completely acceptable and even understandable to see no difference between these Gary's two characters. But at least one of the differences I can put my finger on is that sense of happiness and love Ernesti, and Knights and Magic in general, has for the mech genre. This is infused into more than just the main plot of the anime, because the character who was previously in our world also loved mech so much that he was a Gunpla addict. A similar situation Deku finds himself in with superheroes. Not only does Deku catalog each hero and villain's information inside his various notebooks, but he also collects action figures and toys for the ones that especially brighten his heart, like All Might. Deku and Ernesti may be on entirely different ends of the Gary's 2 spectrum from one another, but their passion for their respective pursuits is clearly displayed as matched in intensity, though Deku admittedly does have moments where he finds women attractive, something our little mechanophile certainly hasn't displayed in the anime so far. Just like Deku with superheroes in his world, the author of My Hero Academia clearly displays his love and admiration for the Silver Age of American comics, with the most obvious being All Might, the living symbol of heroism both in the context of the show and outside of it as well. His incredible strength reflects Superman's, but the philosophy of the show, plus Ultra, is also reminiscent of Superman's ever-present optimism in the face of overwhelming danger. In any situation, both Superman and All Might believe in the right thing, and work further than their supposed limits imply, always reaching forward toward impossibility through sheer force of will. This plus Ultra mentality isn't just for overcoming personal limits though, because going beyond inspires others who come after you to do the exact same thing. Deku, for example, is the living embodiment of All Might's philosophy, both literally with the passing of One for All, and metaphorically by becoming the next generation to follow that philosophy after becoming inspired by it, regardless of his limits. This inspiration, this joy in the thought of righteousness and justice is what made Deku jump out to save Bakugo in the second episode, despite being quirkless, because heroism doesn't just come from powers. It comes from within and without, through action and reaction to the call to go beyond in order to help someone who needs it, regardless of the consequences. This is why Superman always thanked and pointed out the heroism of police officers, firemen, and even citizens around him as heroes just as much as he was. This is also why All Might chose Deku to inherit One for All. This is why it resounds, despite being based on something that came before. This is what the importance of infusing your love and joy means, celebrating the genre instead of just following a story beat for money, to make something new and try to go beyond what came before. So where does Knights and Magic fall into this idea, you might ask? It doesn't seem anything like Gundam or Tengatoppa Gurren Lagann, for example. There is no grand political story with morally gray bad guys and good guys. There's no lesson to be learned in belief or the empowerment of individuals to pierce through fate. It's just a story about a guy who loves mechs so much that he gets the chance to build his own in a fantasy land plagued by monstrous beasts. A show with cliché after cliché stacked up on top of each other. But around which these clichés circle is a core of fierce love, of not necessarily the stories or philosophies of what came before, like My Hero Academia, but the vehicles through which these narratives were delivered. Mechs. Admiration for their designs, incredible interest in how they work in this land with very little technology, investment in making them after finding out how, and improving them to the point where Ernesti can make his own personal mech. To me, this is just as important as having an awesome story and great characters, like Boku no Hero Academia. In fact, the initial idea of my channel was to pursue what the core idea of each show was for an explanation of why I love it so much. For Knights and Magic, that core idea of loving mechs obliterates the need for excellent animation, a good story, and interesting character designs. It's clear to me that despite everything else, the creator of the story really wanted to celebrate mechs, even if he couldn't quite build up a stable environment around it. This is shown with how many mechs are created throughout the series, with iteration upon iteration being given episodes devoted to them. In the source material, this was supposedly given more time to breathe, fixing the pacing problems the anime definitely has, but Ernesti and the creator show such joy and happiness in the core idea that I can't help but have fun with it. Kind of how I felt with High School the Dead, like I mentioned in my video on fan service. The sheer creativity Ernesti and the creator show in coming up with these specific design choices, how the mechs are built, and how the magic is like a programming language is just mesmerizing for me to behold. It gets to the point where everything other than mechs seems like just an excuse for the mechs to exist, shallow or hazy ideas to further pursue what the creator and Ernesti really care about. Perhaps this is the reason so many people seem to hate the show, or don't care about it at least. Knights and Magic doesn't really devote itself to all the window dressing a story requires. It relies upon those clichés to prop up the fun parts, though there's a certain fun idea to play around with in the fact that everything but the mechs is weak in animation, story, etc. because our protagonist doesn't care anything about it that isn't related directly to mechs. Still, that doesn't excuse the problems the anime has. I recognize the entire package is necessary for some people to enjoy an anime, but I still stand by Knights and Magic regardless of this. And I also urge other people to consider watching it, because it can be fun to watch, to connect with the clear joy displayed by Ernesti, to see that creativity and have it spark your own. It's why I made this video after all, so even if some people hate the show, I thank the creator that it exists for making this idea pop in my head. And hey, if you comment or even think to yourself about how bad the show is, or some other negative idea, review, or whatever toward it, I think that's worth it existing too. My Hero Academia and Knights and Magic are two shows that, while completely different in almost every way, share that same joy in what came before, and celebrating it now, even trying to iterate upon it to create something new and interesting. These two shows will give the people an ideal to strive towards, each in their own way, just as they are striving toward an ideal themselves. Future media will race behind them. They will stumble, they will fall. But in time, what comes next will join the past in the sun. In time, the past will help the future accomplish wonders, just as it already has. And that's the importance of infusing joy in your work. Wouldn't you say? Hey everybody, Croswynd here to close out another video with a reminder that if you liked what you saw, you could always consider hitting that subscribe button. And while you're at it, press that notification button as well for instant updates on when another video of mine goes up. If you're already a subscriber, you can also like and share this video to spread my popularity to the farthest reaches of the internet. But if you'd rather talk to me about what I said in the video, or anything you feel like, you can always leave a comment down below or talk to me directly on all my social media, like @Croswynd on Twitter. I also have a Tumblr, a Reddit account, and a Facebook page you can find down in the description. There's also a link to my Patreon in the description if you feel like directly feeding my efforts to bring you more dumb ideas about anime. Regardless of what you do or what you think, I hope you'll remember to always enjoy the way you watch anime. Because as long as you're having fun, that's all that really matters. See you next time.
そのために必要な勇気を探し求めていた